Greetings, Mark Gardens here, reporting in for this Sunday day. How is everybody doing? And today really feels like Sunday, man. I feel like, you know, stomping my feet. I feel like, you know, basically showing enthusiasm from the spirit. And the reason is because I have finally materialized support. I knew it could happen. I believed it could happen. And it happened. It's always a nice feeling. It's like the feeling people got when they started making worthwhile adventures. I feel like I made electricity. But yeah, man, this beautiful. Which is why I decided to pick the verse that I did, because as we know, the world still moves on. Just as easy as you can have a good day that the world doesn't care about, you can have a bad day that the world doesn't care about. And no disrespect to anybody. I'm not trying to wish a bad day on anybody. I wouldn't wish a bad day on anybody. Because a bad day for a person can vary radically. But yeah, it's kinda ironic that I mentioned a bad day because that's exactly what this verse is about. A cat that had a bad day. It's called the parable of the Good Samaritan. I got this from Luke chapter 10, verses 25 37. Read it if you want to. I'm just going to give you what I'm trying to get from it to you. And the summarization of that is a man, I guess, a supporter of Jesus, was looking at Jesus for advice, naturally. And he asked Jesus, he specifically asked him what must he do to essentially be eternally nurtured spiritually. And what Jesus did was gave him a situation in which a cat was mugged, beaten till he was half dead, and three people passed him. Well, came upon him. The first was a priest, another was a Levite, and the last one was what the parable which is talking about, the Good Samaritan. And naturally, the Good Samaritan was the hero of the story. However, this is where things take a turn for the better. Because, as a teacher, we are all guilty of essentially never giving the full solution. There's always, it's like if you've ever been on Khan Academy, it's like when you get a hint, but they don't give you the answer, you just be like, come on. I just want the answer so I can work it out. But you know, that's essentially what I felt like Jesus did. And this is not a critique of Jesus or the story or an interpretation. I'm about to show you what I just pulled out of this from a non-religious perspective. That we have a tendency to let our bias make decisions for us. And that can lead to a good or a bad thing. In this case, I would say the whole situation, the whole story of the parable of the Good Samaritan was all good because, at times it can be uh not hard, but it can be a what you call a morally reluctant situation in which people are placed with the choice of deciding to essentially be a patron or to go about their business. And what I mean by being a patron is not necessarily supporting as my supporters do. What I say by being a patron is essentially involving yourself in another person's life. Most people don't even think about involving themselves with other people as being a patron. But when you think about it, it really is, because by taking your life for what it is in all of its balances and unbalances, and then putting that at risk with another person who you don't know what his unbalances are. You just know that hopefully at the end of the situation there is a balance to this. And that's essentially being a patron, because you are risking your equality, your equilibrium for another person who may or may not upset this equilibrium. And that can be a very risky business. It's like Wall Street for people, basically. Like Wall Street is more concerned about money to numbers, whereas real life is more concerned about people to situations. And at times that can be very calamitous, because there, you never know when you might walk into that domino effect, and you like, what the hell just happened here? What's going on? 1 second I'm good, and then next second what? And that can at times make people very similar to the priest and the Levite, because okay, the priest, as we all know, is a what you call a good counsel, and that's his job, to be good counsel. So his whole life is already introduced with dealing with people's unbalances, because he wouldn't need to be a good counselor if people didn't need counsel. So it wasn't, I don't feel like, in my perspective, it was a flaw on the priest's part to see the, essentially bruised and battered dog, and then decide, I'm not touching this, man. I'm gonna keep it moving, because I don't do I'm not a guard. I'm not a soldier. I don't fight with people. I just tell people not to do stupid stuff, and if they do stupid stuff, I tell them, you know, this is my expertise as far as this situation allows me to explain. And then even the priest is subject to not being qualified to a certain extent into which his counsel is needed, because we all have our unbalances in which we have already measured that involving ourselves at a certain point will ultimately lead to our own demise. And I feel like that is a natural, that is a universal concept of all people. We all have that stop button in which we decide that at this point I can't deal with you. I can't deal with this. No disrespect to you, whatever you do. That's it. I'm done. It's like gambling. People is always gambling. It's like you never would look at your life on its own as a gamble, because naturally, it's encouraged you take choices that are, common sense. You take choices that are essentially the safe route. And that works for 99% of people. But there's always that 1% that says, you know what? I'm just gonna risk it all. And it gotta work for somebody, because if it doesn't, then that's just you can't have a part of life that doesn't exist, that needs to exist. You need to have people that take risks, because if the risks don't get taken, then essentially life becomes stagnated, in the sense that you are ultimately endangering everybody with the safe route. Because what happens when you try to force too many people into one place? It gets overcrowded, it gets dangerous to maneuver, and most importantly, it becomes a hazard and ultimately to navigate whatever the reason is you need to navigate. And essentially what the gambling route does is provide that alternate door for people to go through, so that in a situation in which gambling is necessary, there is that option. That option isn't. We're not talking about breaking down walls here. We're talking about a concept that is perceivable and acceptable. And going on to the Levite, as you know, Levites, Pharisees are essentially upholders of the religious law. They are like the lawmen of religion in terms of like lawyers and stuff. And they have their own jobs as well, because when the priests are at a moral impasse, who are they going to turn to? And that was the point of the Levites, so that the priests wouldn't feel like, dang, my job is for nothing. And you know, the Levites are even higher up in the chain, because you know, if their job is to deal with keeping the priest in balance, then they're that much more encouraged to keep themselves out of other people's trouble, because the idea is that in order to keep unbalanced people balanced, you gotta have a balance of your own. And we're not talking about like simple balance. We're talking about a balance where somebody could come to you with a ridiculous situation. You could be like, calm down, I got you, bro. And you know, that's essentially how that works out. So when I look at the Good Samaritan, he's not really a Good Samaritan to me per se, because you know, we'll never, because of the vagueness of the story, we'll never know what made the Good Samaritan good. We'll never know the background that allows us to deduce like the priest and the Levite, because I don't know, it was just a narration choice of Jesus to do this. So, you know, this is why I feel like the story of the Good Samaritan wasn't really about being a Good Samaritan. It was more about understanding that everybody in that situation played their role. And, you know, when you realize this, then you understand that for this supporter of Jesus to essentially be a bandwagon and let Jesus tell him the answer. Well, not tell him the answer, hints him the answer. It just shows that, you know, being a good Samaritan isn't necessarily following good people or what you perceive as good people, because you may put yourself in a position that you're not even prepared for, but the person that you follow is. Like, if you told me right now that there was a cat on death row because, you know, or whatever reason, I'm not going to be tempted to try to free him. I'm not going to be tempted to try to join him. I'm not going to be tempted to argue, because I'll never get the information I will need to even entertain this idea. And that's just the truth of the fact of the matter of life. That being a good Samaritan is comes with being informed. And once you're informed, you're not even a good Samaritan anymore, because in my opinion, if I could count on the average person to be gullible, in the sense that they won't ask what's going on, then you know, why would I make good choices? You get what I mean? Like, if I could always count on somebody to bail me out, essentially, Why would I need to be a good person when there are so many good people to balance my bad choices? And that is the moral impasse of the Good Samaritan, the idea that being a follower can ultimately lead to you being led into something that you don't want to follow. That you wouldn't like that if I told you that you're about to do this, you wouldn't do it. But you see the problem? You once you've decided that you have um this you wish to cast your human nature aside for a ideal which doesn't fit in a human world, you've already lost the battle. But then again, you know, like I said, that are always like you can't have a bunch of followers with no leaders. So I guess the path to becoming a person which can balance all wrong is to expose yourself to all that's wrong. But at the same time, that's not wise advice to give to the majority of people because the majority of people is not going to want to deal with that. But you know, that's just food for thought because it really is a terrible thing to say that helping your fellow human being out can put you at risk. At the same time, you are always at risk, even if you deal with who you would deem to be safe, because the problem of affiliation is that it is always active. It is like a storm cloud, right? You'll never know when it'll start thundering and raining. You just know that it's always looming. And that's just the fact of the matter of life. And at some point you have to realize that you are a good Samaritan in your own regard if you deal with people. Which probably everybody deals with at least one person. So, essentially everybody's a good Samaritan. The question is, do you lose that status when you make a choice not to involve yourself? And that is a serious question to ponder because, you know, you can't call goodness goodness if it's conditional. However, goodness is not worth being, earned if it could possibly lead to your destruction. And I say destruction in the realistic sense of the lesserment of yourself. Hope that's a word. Yeah, I go again, making words. Oh my god. But I ain't here to promote hostile or you know what you call it. Um, what would you call turning people into statistics? Um, I'm not here to turn. I'm not here to make this a numbers game here. I'm here to basically say that you know, as people who play different roles for different people, you reserve the right to decide when you wish to be right and when you wish to be wrong, if that's what you're perceived as. And I feel like that's a right of everybody to be the judge and the jury of your own situations, however they come about you, because nobody can take control of your body and make you do anything. Nobody can take control of your mind and tell you to think anything. You will always be prone to what you like, and you will always be repelled to what you don't like, and that's just the truth of the fact of the matter. So, I guess to avoid people jumping to the conclusion that are you challenging the parable, I ask you this: if I was challenging the parable, why would I be so focused on people versus, Jesus and his significance? Because this isn't about Jesus. This is about the average person who will be placed in a situation, who probably already has been placed in this situation, and, made whatever choice they made to the betterment or lesserment of their fellow man. And, I feel like that's just a truth of the fact of the matter thing, because, you know, the world can at times be very uncertain in terms of, there I go again. Let me make a different, not make it, let me use a different word. The world at times can be very made up, in the sense that what you thought was the world will always change quicker rather than sooner rather than later, because of the experiences you have in life. And I feel like these experiences you have in life will always uh, elevate and de-elevate situations, or your mental geographic landscape. And I say that's a very technical term. Mental geographical landscape. What I mean is, there are times in which people will better themselves, or lessen themselves to the in relation to another person, and their betterment of themselves in relation to another person is what is an elevation, and lesserment of themselves in relation to another person is where there are de-elevations. And it's funny because, you know, most people tend to believe that the world is round, but in my argument, the world is very flat, especially in how you would navigate it as a human being, because, you know, the world isn't made of, believe it or not, the world isn't made of air, the world isn't made of rock, the world isn't made of metals. The world is made of your choices. Your choices will shape whether you're in a valley, you're on a mountain, you're on your way to a valley, you're on your way to a mountain. And that's just how it works, because, I use that analogy a lot as well, but when you're talking about a place in which everyone resides, that's essentially the key uh the key puzzle piece to everybody's picture. And the reason I say that is because people will always have different opinions on what will help them versus not help them. And then from there you get people that suffer, you get people that don't suffer, you get people who survive off of people suffering, you get people who create suffering, you get people who suffer for other people. You get what I mean? Like, it's just, people will always put themselves in a revolving position in relation to the parable. Not everybody's going to be the good Samaritan. Not everybody's going to be the priest. Not everyone's going to be the Levite. But most certainly, everybody's going to have that situation where they are the troubled man, the bruised, battered man, at some point in their life, because you will always be in a position to compromise. And the reason why you're compromising is because you're telling yourself that by accepting this compromise, you are putting someone over you. However, once you make it through this, you will ultimately be a better person. And this is not a Jesus encouragement. This is not a message of love. I'm not a priest or a clergy or affiliated. I am a non-religious voice speaking from a point-proven perspective. And what that means is that I'm not going to try to tell you what to do. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you what I would do or what I would try to do. I'm telling you that the world, in relation to the Good Samaritan, will always be fluid. So you take it how you will. And that's just the truth of the fact of the matter. So the next focus I would have to put my mind to is when someone tells you to follow in their footsteps, at what point do you feel like it is not to your advantage? At the same time, if someone is telling you to follow in their footsteps, when can it ever be to your advantage? And the answer to that is that it's never about your advantage, because you will always have this logic in which you will recalculate and then calculate how, a person's trajectory to yours can either slingshot you ahead or throw you into the dirt. And how you calculate that is always going to be subjective to how your life has been lived. You are not to think that at any point you have to make a certain choice, because if you understand your goal or goals as they need to be done, then there will always be more than one solution. And that's just another fact of life. But that's just I feel like I'm telling Aesop's fables right now, but I'm not, because I don't really have a story for you. I've shared a story with you, but I'm not really trying to harp on a moral point. I'm trying to apply real world logic to old world thinking. And that is the whole point of these religious talks, because my motivation for the religious talk was that I was so confused that, like, what do I do with religious tomes that are essentially like bindings for me? Like they're like textbooks that just lie around and collect dust for me. And I'm like, it would be dumb for me to say that these documents, which are supposed to better mankind, are useless to me, because if they're essentially supposed to better mankind, they should be a tool for everyone, no matter your background, no matter your line of thinking, or whatever differentiates you from a typical uh essentially pursuer of self-improvement. So, I do hope to ultimately draw parallels instead of between the Bible and the real world between the Bible and other religious documents. But that's going to come with time as well, because I am of the opinion that in order for me to apply what I just told to you to my advantage, I must calculate how I can meet the good Samaritan for my situation. And that's going to take planning and stuff for me, as well as you know, essentially more importantly meeting the right people. But that's later, we'll talk about now. Um Another thing is that it he Jesus asked this guy what was his interpretation of the law, and he essentially, you know, got that spiritual well-being, as well as you know, the golden rule was the key to all law, because the golden rule says to treat your neighbor as you treat yourself. But if that is harmful to your spiritual well-being, then what are you going to do about it? I mean, really, logically, if your spiritual well-being is keeping you feeling like your world is balanced because you taking L's to your neighbor is your motivation of life, then how can that really benefit your spiritual progression as a complete being? But at the same time, I can see how people can be stuck between a rock and a hard place with this, because when you decide to manipulate the relationship um in order to feed your spiritual well-being, you're ultimately putting a person that was putting you in your position in your old position. And that's not even spiritual well-being anymore, because you know how can you say that you are becoming a better person, a more complete person, if your completeness is a result of making someone else incomplete? So I have to ask, like, how can a person balance the golden rule with spiritual well-being? And I can't really say I can't say for everybody. However, I can say that, you know, it can be, if you apply the golden rule correctly, it can have scary results, man. That's all I can say, man. And that's just the truth of the fact of the matter, man. Because, the hardest thing in the world is walking in shoes that don't fit you. And I feel like that was the saving grace of the golden rule. The idea that if I was able to endure all the pain in the world, right? And somehow came out alive from it. Not in no stupid position like you a zombie, like you brain dead something, or you paralyzed for the rest of your life. Like, no, nothing stupid like that. Like, if you was legitimately able to take all the pain in the world, right? And you know, not even have a modicum of malice for anybody, right? What could anybody do to you? Like literally, what could anybody do to you? Like seriously, you would by ignoring progression of spiritual wellness and focusing on making your shoes fit you. You've already accomplished two things by doing one thing. What they call killing two birds with one stone. And what that can mean is crazy. It really is. Because, I ain't telling nobody to go on no freaking cross and get crucified. I would never tell that to a human being. To essentially put yourself in danger to another human being just for the you know the opportunity of having that experience. Because like I said before, talking about the parable and stuff, everybody's choices are not going to be linear. There are people that like loops. I talked about loops before. You should look it up. I talked about people who are like in ghost loops, in the sense that they'll wait until the right opportunity comes and then jump out the loop into a new like essentially incorporate new things. And you know that is that you know that's just a reality that you know the golden rule may very well just not be the golden rule. Because I feel like a lot of people wouldn't want to feel like Jesus. As admirable as Jesus can be, a lot of people want to feel like that, because um you're talking about doing things that defy human survival instinct, that defy human capacity for survival. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm saying that people are weak. I'm not trying to sound like saying that people are supposed to be fearful of their gains and their losses. But I'm just using human experience to tell you that I already know that people don't want to walk in the same shoes as everybody else. Ideally, if people could, people would pick a direction in space and just go there. Because space is so big, it would work out. Everybody would have their own direction to go to, and nobody would get in anybody's way. But with no figurative analogies, I'm saying that the golden rule is its own key to success, but it's a very, very specific key. It's no master key, not at all, especially in the doors of life. Because not everybody deems you're going to make sacrifices if you really take the golden rule into consideration. Everybody doesn't, I feel like nobody really is going to throw away all reason for risk just to see how the golden rule plays out. And that's just, how that works out. So if the golden rule is not the golden rule, then what is the golden rule for spirit? I feel like that's I was more worried about that than I was more worried about the spiritual wellness being not elaborated on. Because if my spiritual wellness is as important as the golden rule, then how can I carry that out? if I've already eliminated the golden rule as the keys to that method? And I feel like that is the real journey for people. When you've already figured out that, I can't treat my neighbors I would treat myself, because I treat myself spoiled. Like, if you don't spoil yourself, then, I don't believe you. Everybody spoils himself, because, that is a healthy human habit, which can be, you know, ignored at times when you're investigating the Bible or whatever religious document that you are privy to, because spiritual, like I also talked about before, spiritual wellness transcends material limitations, in the sense that you are not looking you are not looking at this world for your um indicator of success. You are looking for a abstract effect, a most commonly drawn out as a muse, as an epiphany, as a that moment when you get it in your head, that this is your significant moment. I feel like the parable of the Good Samaritan didn't really point out why the Good Samaritan was good, and the reason was because I feel like in that specific case, that was the Good Samaritan's moment, his moment of significance, where you feel like, you know something clicks in your head and you do something, and something had clicked in his head, and from there he decided that, you know what, I'm gonna take this risk, and yeah, that's it. And that's it. I don't want to mess up your significant moment, because I don't know if it has happened, but it will happen. If it already has happened, then you already know what I'm talking about. And if it hasn't happened, then you don't need to know what I'm talking about. You can just erase this thought from your mind that you are to expect something, because to expect something is to anticipate a realistic event. Like, you expect the sun to rise. You expect when an object falls to make noise. You expect when water falls on you to feel wet. All physical expectations. There is no physical expectation for spiritual wellness. It is I can't even say it's a mental thing, because mental associations are always linked to physical phenomena. If somebody pushes you, you get mad. If you lose somebody important to you, you get sad. If you get something that you want, you get excited. There is always a physical association to mental stimulation. So spiritual wellness can't even be limited in that regard. And that is dependent on a physical thing to determine when it will exist. You will have spiritual wellness provided that you are putting yourself in positions to um get that click. And I hate to use a word to explain it because I can't really explain it for somebody who's is going to have it differently. I can't tell you how it happens, because if I did, you would be like, what the hell are you talking about? That's not how it happens. For me, it happened yada yada yada. So I can't. So I'm gonna leave it at that. This is not going to, this I'm never going to turn religion into a philosophy, because it's not a philosophy. It transcends philosophy. Spiritual wellness is akin to what other religions would consider um reaching the climax of your environment. And when I say climax of your environment, I'm talking about once you are no longer overcome by essentially physical strains. I'm not a Red Bull commercial here. I ain't talking about you gonna grow wings or something. No, no, no. You're not gonna turn to an angel neither, or a demon, depending on how your spiritual wellness develops. But that's a different story. But you know, your spiritual wellness is you. And whatever makes you, I don't know. I'll never know. That's gonna be up to you. And I'm gonna let you realize you. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. So in order to wrap things up, we will point out that what you take from situations is not important. What you don't take from situations is not important. What you need to realize is that all the work that needs to be done when you go through situations is already done. You are processing mentally, you are experiencing physically, but you are changing spiritually. And I'm not trying to sound like I drink holy water, because I don't. Not at all, not in the least bit. I'm no Mother Teresa, I'm no Gandhi. But I do know what it means to be spiritually well. And it may come as hard to believe, because most people attempted to assume a certain amount of things. And you're entitled to your assumptions, you're entitled to your critiques. I choose to withhold my critiques. And that's that. So, you will have your good Samaritan moment if you already have it. And when you have your good Samaritan moment, you should always consider that there is nothing to be considered. You should just let that change occur without watering it down with useless ideas, by watering it down with stupid experiences. Never try to link anything emotional to a spiritual change. Your spiritual change is supposed to feel good. You are not supposed to weep when you experience your spiritual change. It is supposed to make you. It's like a invisible happiness, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, then it will make sense. It should make sense at some point in your life. And I'm not trying to harp on this. I'm just trying to um I am trying to uh get the point of, I'm trying to really emphasize the point that the good Samaritan is not a good Samaritan. Now, nor is he good, nor is he a good person. He is a changed person. This is the what you would call the tree of life for you, because most people have taken the Adam and Eve analogy as a sort of theory of original sin, but I'm like, original sin is only a source of information, essentially. It is not supposed to be looked at as a past mistake. It is supposed to be looked at as something to gain from. And I feel like the Adam and Eve analogy is the precursor to the Good Samaritan analogy, because I find it very fitting that they would perpetuate original sin as a in a something that forever changed Adam and Eve. And you know, it doesn't matter who got it first or who got it last. Just like it doesn't matter in life who finishes first and who finishes last, because you're one person. And as one person, you will always be subject to individualistic goals, individualistic habits and traits, and individualistic an individualistic pace. So when you feel that change happen, that doesn't mean that your journey is over. That doesn't mean that you are complete. That just means that you are different. And I'm gonna leave it at that. That's it. um, this is a good moment though, because now I get to shout out my supporters. First on the list would be Juanita Hooper. Shout out to Juanita Hooper, my first supporter. She was the cornerstone of the operation. Um, she essentially held it down, man. I can't give her any less credit. I can give her more credit because, you know, being the first is definitely a good feeling. You know, so shout out to her. I would like to shout out to Shamia Skinner, because she decided to be a supporter as well. I mean, you know, second place. They say second place means you first to lose. I'm be like, nah. If you in the winning circle, then you already where you need to be. So there it is. And you know, we got the what you would call a bronze medalist out here, but it's okay because you know they get their own rights because they didn't even leave their name. They supported and just said, "I want the fame." That's it. I gotta shout out to my first anonymous patron, and as well as to my second anonymous patron. Much appreciated. You are a worthwhile and appreciated improvement to what I'm trying to do here. As is all my supporters, and as will be every supporter I get till I stop getting them. Even if I stop getting them, I still got supporters. So I always gonna have people to, you know, point out as my circle. So thank you for listening for this Sunday day. Thank you, my supporters. I hope you listen in, and even if you didn't, you've already done your public good, your public decent, your